Difficult question, because we don't have, of course, the distance to answer that, because we are living the process now. It's going on. So, and of course we have data, but they are just arriving now, and we are beginning to analyze that kind of large amount of especially survey data that one begins to have. Intuitively, I can say we observe a rise. It's obvious in the use of new technologies, especially, of course, meeting technologies that, like the one we are using now. We use that kind of technologies to have interactions with our colleagues, with our students, with friends and the family, and so on. It's changing much as regards interaction, but I'm not sure. I think one must be very careful in terms of when one tries to infer from that systematic rise of the acceptance, because acceptance can mean, well, we're okay, but we're okay in theory, and we don't really practice more so much. It's clear there is an intensification of the use by everybody. We are upgrading our skills. It's obvious as well, I think. At least it's the case for me, but I'm thinking that, well, I'm getting better at doing things with new technology, especially the ones that relate to interactions, internet, and so on, and communicating information, and etc. But we also see some resistance. So there is probably, as always, an ambivalent evolution. That is both an acceptance and a greater use in some sectors of the society, at least, especially among the qualified workers and what we call the professions in sociology, where it probably has also created another trend, which I think is important. It's a decrease in aspects of well-being at work related to new technologies, which I think is another very important issue that one has to deal with. That is the fact that digitalization can lead, in some cases at least, to extra loads of work, to burnout in some cases. You have a lot of meetings and you don't really control your schedule. And also psychological issues, I think, that are very complex to tackle at that time, because we don't have, again, the distance to really assess that. But I think there are some addictions, there are some new psychological pathologies that will probably derive from an overuse of that kind of new technologies that, in classical ways, I mean, you lose the contact with your family, with your friends, you dived into some very particular virtual world. And it's true that the pandemic was very real, and at the same time it has created very particular virtual worlds, which may have in some cases had bad consequences for real interactions, for human interactions, for meaning, for the way we usually deal with social life, which is important. First, I have to discuss a bit the notion of modes of social interactions that are supposed to be the ones that we had before. In France, for example, it's a joke, but we have the kisses when you meet someone, which have stopped, obviously. We don't touch anymore each other. We don't have physical contact as we used to have. And I think the short-term, at least, consequence of the crisis is that it has created some new physical distance with a social distance. It's actually a physical, socially determined, we should say, distance, which is a new thing, obviously, and which will probably last. And of course, it has changed a lot as regards direct interaction again, but in a way, at least the polarization between isolation and intense integration hasn't completely changed, I think. I mean, it's an hypothesis. It's an hypothesis that one has to work with, that in a sense it has, I would say, increased the polarization between the one without interaction and with bad quality interactions, and the ones with good, intense, in-depth interactions in their social life. What is, I think, very striking and very interesting is the fact that it has shown how much interaction is important in our life. I mean, interaction is really central, any kind. I mean, digital interaction is one type of interaction among many others, which can take many various meanings and ways as well as physical interaction, which can, in a sense, compensate for the lack of physical interaction. With this question, because it's the classical sociological question, I think, that we all had in mind at the beginning of the crisis. Will it change, and especially will the after change something as regard inequality, and especially that kind of inequality that relates to digital divide and the fact that the world is not equal when it comes to having access to a computer, having access to a good connection, having access to an application, being able to deal with it, being able to work with it, having the time to work with it, having, etc., etc. And what I would say is that, of course, I think it will not radically change things, because it's also a classical hypothesis that we have, at least in the kind of sociology that I practice, that we think that well, things may appear to have elements of change, but one should also very carefully look at the changes in practices and representations over time, and probably regularities are stronger than rapid change, actually. But there of course may be some change. Why is it so slow and so unchanging, whereas we all like things to change rapidly, and all people being able to deal with all those tools easily in their daily life? Because it relates both to economic capital, of course, to the access to a certain equipment of computers, and we still have huge inequalities as regards equipment. The crisis has revealed that there are some excluded groups that really don't have, and even not excluded groups. We have families in the middle classes where you have one computer for 5 persons, which obviously creates a situation of tension when everybody must have access to a computer. I think that's the first basic kind of inequality that was socio-economic, classical inequality that one has to recall. So that's, of course, present. And the other element, and I come back here to Bourdieu, classically, the fact that cultural capital is also very central here. And that means embodied dispositions, that's in your body, in your brain especially, that your habits are very stable in a sense, and very uneasy to change rapidly. So it's not that rapidly that you will move from a practice without any computer and without any access to digital interactions and so on, to a practice that is the other way, that is on the other side. So I would say there will probably be some long-term changes, but probably slower than expected by people who tend to think that it has this crisis will accelerate a lot changes. It will accelerate some changes, obviously, but it will also probably have the contrary effect for some people and some groups. So 1 year needs, again, surveys and data, because all that is hypothetical and needs to be substantiated by data collection and new surveys and synthesis of that. Maybe in 1 year, I will tell you I was wrong for 9 points on 10, but I'm not sure, because I think once you know that you have to be prudent, you tend to be rather cautious about the changes.